Hi, Nikki. Welcome to the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast.
Hey, Julia, thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm really excited for our chat today. We've known each other through the CPC mentorship, and then we got to meet in person at the summit, and we've kind of gotten really close in the past several months. So I'm really looking forward to having you share your story with our listeners and bringing all your unique wisdom to them. So what I would love to do to start is, can you share with our listeners what you're currently doing in the health and wellness space? And then we can kind of back it up, talk a little bit about maybe how you got there, what brought you to IHP and doing what you're doing. And then you have the most beautiful story that the second you told it, I was like, yep, I'm having her tell that story on the podcast because it's incredible. But we'll get there in a few minutes.
Okay, sure. So I'm an integrative health practitioner, level 2 in mastery. And like you said, going through the Centurion program has been amazing to just learn more about labs and all the intricacies that go with it. But I primarily work right now I have a wide audience, but mostly just women and more recently, a lot of children too, but primarily moms and women and people who've just kind of been through the ringer. And, as we know, sometimes even just being a mom can do that to you, right? And when I first started, becoming an IHP, I focused a lot on gut health, and I still do because it was a huge part of my own story. And we know how much gut can impact our overall health and well-being. But, kind of as time has gone on, I've really started to just lean into how the nervous system itself is so important and how just a dysfunctional nervous system can cause gut dysfunction and prevent people from actually healing their guts in the first place. You can do all the right things, but if your nervous system is dysregulated, much like mine had been for so long, it can be really hard to heal. So just in the last 6 months to 9 months, I've been taking a bigger focus on nervous system regulation, with gut health too.
Yes, of course. Yeah. And sometimes it's like you can do all the things and things get better. And we know those clients, right, who just continue to relapse. And it's like, oh gosh, why do we always end up back at the same point? And a lot of the times it's just because that nervous system dysregulation continues to happen. And then, okay, wearing thin, and then boom, right back to where they started. So it really is like such a foundational approach to healing anything, because without it, right, without that nervous system regulation, you're either only going to be able to do so much or get so much of the benefits, or potentially just end up back in the same place that you started.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I find this with all my clients. I really do, like 95% at least of my clients really have just trauma and stress and just nervous system dysregulation present in their healing journey. And that's part of it. And so making that well known to the client is really beneficial just from the very get-go and at the very beginning, how mindset and all of these things matter, right?
Yes. I remember years ago, it would be that, I would have somebody do a gut-based protocol, and then maybe we would do heavy metals. And it was like, oh my gosh, things still aren't getting better. And then I would be like, so tell me about stress, or, is there then I would think like maybe there's underlying trauma. Whereas now I think much like you, like that's my first thought is, okay, what is the nervous system landscape like? Is there a lot of significant, stored trauma that is causing all of this dysregulation? And prevention of normal processes in the body happening optimally, things like digestion, right? Hormone production, all of that. And it's that shift can be, I think, so impactful. It can prevent wasting a lot of time too.
Yeah. And to go along with that too, so much of people's focus tends to be, I want to fix this symptom in my body. I want to fix this symptom in my body. But we're not really even addressing, spiritual and mental health as much as I think we ought to, and how much that has a role in nervous system health as well. And oftentimes when you just start working on the spiritual mental part of it, then the physical just kind of falls into place. And that's kind of been part of my recent story too. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yes. And how did you find IHP? What were you doing before this? Were you in another role, another industry?
I was in a whole nother universe. I used to be an elementary education teacher, and which kind of fits into now, like I've learned to teach, and that's what I do, right? I teach adults, not children, now, but I was a teacher and I lived a conventional, standard American, which we call SAD diet and standard American life. Ate all the things, pretty much grew up on fast food and canned food and all the garbage, but never really felt the repercussions of it until later in life when I was pregnant with my third child. My husband and I were building a home, and we were just kind of going through the stress of everything that encompasses that. And I got pregnant, and then I had a very rough pregnancy, like very, very, very rough. In the midst of all of that, when I was 8 months pregnant, my dad, who I love dearly, passed away very suddenly. And the trauma of that was huge on my body. And immediately I just thought, well, I don't want to address this trauma. I don't want to feel these emotions because I want to protect the baby. I'm 8 months pregnant. I don't want to have a premature birth or anything like that. So I suppressed those emotions, not really realizing how damaging that can be. And, and then after I had my child, I got really, really sick. And of course, I started seeing, all these doctors who were just kind of trying to give me different pills and medications for things. One doctor led to a next, which led to another. And it turned into, you have the worst Hashimoto's I've ever seen in my life, to you have lupus, to now you have chronic Lyme disease and all these things. And it was a wreck. And right smack in the middle of that, another very emotional trauma hit me, like about a year after my dad died, where I found some really devastating news out about my dad. That was very traumatic. That he just wasn't the person that I had thought, that I had known and loved. So here I am trying to battle this dad I love so much in my heart with this monster. He's a monster. Like my brain could not make that connection. And it was just very, very traumatic. And again, I pushed it aside. I'm like, I got my health to deal with. I can't think about this. This is just too much. And pulling into those, when you suppress these emotions and when you don't let that trauma release, it's detrimental. My health spiraled. It got so bad. And to make matters worse, the literal perfect storm, my baby sister passed away just a year after that, very suddenly and unexpectedly. And, but something in me at that time told me, there's something, you're going to die if you don't release this. You need to feel this one. And I just started processing that one, and everything came to a head. And it was very hard. I'm still working through it. I really am. But I will tell you that something in me lit up and just said, there's something more to this story. Like, healing is possible. Emotions have a role in your health. And, it was like right around that time I went to see my endocrinologist, and she said, well, look, all your thyroid labs are starting to come back to, baseline now that you're taking this medication. And I said, yeah, but I still feel horrible. And she said, no, honey, you're just depressed. That's just being a new mom again. I'm like, that's it. That was just like the last straw for me. And I started looking into functional medicine, integrative medicine, and, kind of going down that rabbit hole. And somehow I found Dr. Cabral, actually through Angie Green, if anyone knows who that is, just kind of found her. And then she introduced me to Dr. Cabral. And it was like, I just felt this peace in me that this is what I needed to do for myself. I had no plans of becoming an integrative health practitioner. I had zero desire at that time. I just wanted to heal and learn about how everything I had gone through, emotions, trauma, all these health issues were all connected. I just knew they were. And that's exactly what I learned through becoming an integrative health practitioner. And it was just really life-changing. And I began to heal very rapidly after that. And yeah, I do still have some healing to do. I'm still working through some of that. But, through all of that, my nervous system became highly dysregulated. And a lot of people would tell me, it's just all in your head. Like, you're fine. Like, you're going to be fine. Just listen to the doctor's orders, take this medication, do that. And through all of that, I just learned, this is my story. I know better. I'm going to share whatever I want to share and do what I want to do. And take it or leave it, like it or not. This is me. This is my story. So I just felt so empowered to just share my story with other people and help other people however I could to heal. It just became a passion that just lit within inside me so rapidly. And I was just on fire for it. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell. It's a pretty lengthy one, but that's kind of how I found myself to IHP.
Well, thank you for sharing all of that. And I think so many of us become so almost enraged with passion and wanting to just share because you knew what it was like to be in the depths of despair. True, not only were you grieving incredible losses, but now you had someone telling you you're depressed. Well, no kidding. First of all. Second of all, does anybody talk about the deficient aspect of, right? It's just does becoming a new mother automatically trigger a neurotransmitter imbalance that causes depression? No, there's a whole lot that happens in between that, right? And when you're in a place where you feel so low and you know that really it was your own strong will that got you out of that, it's kind of my gosh, everybody should know that this is an option. Everybody should know that this exists. Everybody should know that, no, you don't have to just take what someone tells you is going to be the best for you and run with it. And it's so clear, how passionate you are.
Yeah. And it just right, as you said, too, because nobody checked all these things. No one looked to see what deficiencies I had or gut toxicities or anything like that until I started exploring, functional medicine in the integrative world. And when I started looking at my gut and when I started looking, I ran my HTMA, it was awful. All these labs that I ran, I'm like, nobody found this in my blood work. Nobody even tried to look. No one asked, what are you eating? How are you nurturing yourself? How are you grieving? Nobody asked me these questions. It all plays into a bigger role for your overall health and well-being. And so when you support the body and you just give it what it needs, remove the toxicities and replace the deficiencies, support your mental, emotional, spiritual health, things just fall into balance. And that's what I had to learn myself through IHP. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Okay. What I would love to do is switch gears a little bit. And you talked about how you love sharing your story. It's you, take it or leave it. And the kind of thing that I want to shift to a little bit is just this passion of one, sharing the knowledge, but also kind of doing it in this unapologetic kind of, really in a way that there's no strings, you don't know what's going to come of it, but frankly, it's just what you're going to do because it's what you believe you're here to do. It's your purpose. And it's a story that happened after the Reimagining Health Summit. I'm already crying. Oh God. And I want you to share with our listeners from the beginning. So we heard Dr. Tony speak, who is the founder of Hope for Cancer. And I'm going to let you kind of do the story from there. And then hopefully I'll stop crying and I'll be able to talk after that.
It's okay. Yeah, I guess I have found on my journey that through it all, there's a bigger picture involved. When I was going through my health journey and I was seeing my trials turning into triumphs and my wounds turning into wisdom, and I was being able to support all these people without even trying. I just God would put me in situations, at least that's my view, where I was able to support somebody or help them or give them this little bit of insight or nugget or just be able to relate to them. And that's what's really cool. And so I have unapologetically been a voice on my Instagram or just in public where I just share things without hesitation or worrying about offending anybody or worrying, what are they going to think if I say this or that, because I've just learned life is too short to not. And when you're being afraid, when you're scared and you hold on and you don't share something, it could have been that one thing to help that person. You just don't know. And at first, fear would encapsulate me because I was a very introverted person. And I've more so learned lately to just let it out. And I've found that to be my biggest success, even with my clients. They're like, you're just you don't hold back. And I'm like, yeah, I don't, because who does that serve? Right. So this story that you're talking about, we went to the Reimagining Health Summit, which I've gone to every single year, and I have loved it. It's been amazing to connect with people, to hear from all the speakers and just gain even more knowledge and insight. And this year when I went, I was not able to take my family with me, which made me sad because I really wanted to. It's fun bringing the kids and the husband and having time on the side for them as well. But I wasn't able to. And part of me was like, I don't even know if I want to go this year. It's just, I felt so bad leaving my husband with the kids and like having to scramble to try to do lunches and school and his work and everything. But, I went, and I'm so thankful that I went, obviously, for the reasons I just described. But while we were there, one of the speakers was Dr. Tony, and he shared about hope for cancer. And it was such a powerful talk. I mean, I could have listened for days to him. He has so much to share. And he has a book called Hope for Cancer that he had at the event that, was available for purchase for anybody who wanted to. And there were many things available for purchase. But I didn't want to purchase anything at the event. I just said, no, when I get home, I'll order things on Amazon or order things from Equalife or whatever, because my suitcase was so full getting there. And then they give you all this free stuff when you purchase a ticket. And I had no room. I didn't even have room for my free stuff. So I was like, all right, I have to go to FedEx and I have to mail some of this home already, right? Like I had no space. But after that Hope for Cancer talk, something in me was like, buy that book, like buy it here. And I'm like fighting with my own self because it's a thick book. And I'm like, I don't have room in my suitcase at all. I don't want to ship it home. It's a heavy book. I'll just buy it on Amazon. I checked the price. It's not like any more expensive. But something in me just said, buy it here. And against my own will, I don't know what, I just went to the stand, and I even excused myself from a conversation with some of my friends. I'm like, I got to get that book before it runs out. And I went and I bought the book. And I'm like carrying it upstairs, and I'm already thinking like, okay, this is going to be challenging. But the last day I kind of am sorting through my suitcase, trying to figure out where to put things. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to mail this home. Then I'm like, no, I'm not mailing this home. The book is coming home with me in the suitcase. I'll put some clothes, I'll put some shoes, I'll put some other stuff in the package. I had a good size box I had to mail home. And I got it to fit, just crammed it in there, got it in there. And after the event on the way home, I thought this is going to be a great book to read on the airplane. And so I just, pulled out the book and I started reading it. And I was like, man, that flight went by so fast because it was such a good book. There's so much great information, even just within that first chapter or two. And then, who I was sitting next to, this woman who was flying alone. And then next to her was this man who was flying alone. Both were probably in their like late 50s, early 60s, perhaps. And really, really nice people. We kind of introduced ourselves at the beginning, but then just the flight was late, just read our books, kind of took little naps, whatever. After the flight, we put our things away and stored it under, the seat. And just kind of sitting there and just chit-chatting. And the man pulls out his phone and he's like, I can't wait to see fall in Ohio and Kentucky. I'm from Kentucky and I'm from Florida. So I'm here to see my grandbabies. Look at my sweet grandbabies. And he's showing us his sweet little grandbabies on his phone. And we're just, me and this woman are just like gleaming for him. So excited for him. And he goes, the lady next to me, she said, man, aren't kids and grandkids such a blessing? And he said, yeah, they are. But then his face dropped and he said, but it can be painful too. And it just hurts to think about it, because he said, I lost my daughter a few months ago to cancer. And he's still hurting from that, clearly. And he told us a story about how it all transpired and how it happened. And it was just heart-wrenching listening to it. And then he said, but, I'm excited to see my little grandbabies and, my son and all of that. And my wife couldn't come because she's back home and she's battling cancer herself right now. And she had it once and they got it into remission and it came back. And doctors don't know what to do. Chemotherapy is not working. We've tried all these different things and we're just kind of at a standstill right now. So she's back home and I'm just praying for something, some kind of answer. And right then I just felt in my heart, get that book. He needs that. Give him that book. You need to give him that book. And I'm like, my book? I need to give him that book. Okay. It just clicked right then and there. That was the urge that was driving me to get that book. I just felt like God was telling me, like, that's why I made you buy that book. That's why. There's no other logical reason why I came home with that book when I could have bought it on Amazon. And then I just felt everything in me to get that book. So I reached out and I grabbed that book. And yeah, a little piece of me was saying, I rebought the book on Amazon. So that's why I have it in my hand. A little piece of me was saying, what if he just rejects it? And he's like, no, I'm not into this. But then I'm like, but what if not? Right? I don't care. I'm going to listen and I'm going to respond to how I feel. I don't care what people think around me. I don't care if he wants it or not. I'm going to offer this book to him because that's what my heart's telling me I need to do. And so I offered him this book and I said, hey, I feel like God's telling me I need to give this to you. And he just teared up. He said, I don't know what to say. I thank you so much. He just was completely speechless. He had never heard of Dr. Tony or Hope for Cancer. And I felt like his whole world lit up right then and there as I kind of started explaining to him what this book was about and the Hope for Cancer Treatment Center and Dr. Tony and everything I had learned. I just started spilling it out as fast as I could while we were getting off the plane and we were walking to the luggage together. And he just kept welding up with tears. He said, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I'll never see this man again. I don't know how it impacts his life, but I know that I responded to the call that my heart was telling me to do something. And I did it unapologetically and without fear. And that's just how I've learned to live my life, is to share my message without fear and to not be afraid, because maybe this was the seed that planted into his heart that maybe is going to help his wife and maybe some other people too. He can share the wealth with other people. Right. So, that was an amazing, amazing story that just kind of goes to show how God can turn hurt into triumphs, and trials into triumphs. And none of this would have ever happened had I not gone through my own health struggles. It's just like, I would never want to go through what I went through again, but I would never turn back time and undo it, because it made me who I am. And it helped me to help so many other people. So just using your voice and using your story and not being afraid to share what you know to be true. Yeah.
Yes. And I love the story for so many reasons, because it also, like, trusting that we're exactly where we're supposed to be, even if you are in the depths of despair, like, there's going to be, right, something that comes from that. Like, you were right where you were supposed to be when you were on that plane with that book, when you were at the summit and you bought the book. And then when you were trying to figure out, should I ship the book home? Should I take the book with me? Right. Like, if we truly live life to believe that, I think we both share a strong faith, but whatever you believe is kind of the driving force of, if you can have some sort of trust in the fact that, like, we are truly here to be a part of something so much greater than ourselves. And when you open your heart to that possibility, that message, all of that, these kinds of things just happen, right? Call it energy, call it divine intervention, call it whatever you want. But when your heart is open and you aren't operating from a place of fear and you're operating from just a place of love and unapologetic, I am who I am, these things tend to be put in our lives, right? These situations tend to be put in front of us to change other lives. Like it's like the beauty of life, right? We can look at all of the ways that life can get us down and all of the things but then like there's these stories like this where you're like, oh, like this is what it's all about. This is like why we are here. Because there's days where I'm sure you felt them in the past, right? And I felt them too, like, why? Like, what is this all worth, honestly, right? When you are in the worst of the worst. And as soon as you told the story, I was like, I'm having you on the show to tell that story because one, I think if I was in that position, I would have second guessed longer than you did. Like, should I give the man this book? What if he thinks I'm crazy? What if he gets upset with me? What if, or like, second guessing, like, who are you to give this man a book? You don't know him, right? But I love that you are so sure of like, yes, this is now it, like the whole thing makes sense. I was supposed to be here to give this man this book. I think it's the most beautiful message about how when you just like truly trust and believe in yourself, that beautiful things can happen. And the what ifs can always go both ways. I was 13 days late pregnant with my daughter. And I remember like, I was talking to her and I'm like, could you let's just not give them a reason to stress us out. Like one more day, my doctor was going to pressure me to get induced. And I'm like, if you just came on your own, like we could have a beautiful experience. Like, I know you're comfortable, but I said, I'm going to go buy you something for your room and I'm going to buy you something beautiful. And then it's going to be go time. Like I remember talking to her. So I went to this little shop down the street and they had this sign that I was like, oh my God, that's so beautiful. It was like reclaimed wood and it was like whitewashed. It matched like her whole theme perfectly. And all it said on it is, what if I fall? And then below it, it said, but my darling, what if you fly? And I was like, oh my gosh, like such a beautiful message for a little girl, right? We always like, sure, what if I fall? Or you might fly. You just don't we don't know. But like the only problem comes in not trying or not doing anything and being crippled by fear or, the what ifs. And so I just love that you shared that in a way that really was like, you could have done so many different things in that instance. And yeah, you might never see that man again, but I will believe, and I hope you do too, that like whether or not his wife is cured by that, positively, something beautiful came of it that day. Even if it was just that man's faith in humanity was restored. Maybe he was just feeling down and maybe you just made him look at the world a different way, right? Like it's so hard to know, but yeah.
I often find a lot of people too are just afraid to share what's really on their mind, because if we have a true passion for health and healing, we shouldn't be afraid because you're going to always get criticism in life. I've learned that. But then just pushing past that and saying, what's the worst that's going to come out of that? Nothing. There's always going to be criticism. There's always going to be pushback. And I mean, had that man responded to me like, no, I'm not interested. I don't care. I don't want this. Oh, well, so what? It's the same way. I'm never going to see him again. It's like, you just have to live.
That's what comes with being so like doing the work and being so sure and not when what other people think of us, right, is dictates how we proceed in the world, right? That's a trauma response. And that just goes to show you how far you've come with the work that you've done over the years.
Never thought of it that way, Julia. Yeah, I think that a lot of that has allowed me to, because I just kept everything in. And now that I've been letting things out and just letting it go, forgiving and moving on, it's been so healing. And I think that that is part of what has allowed me to just be the voice that I am. And I find it's helped so many people to do the same, to just not be afraid. And we also live in this world where a lot of things are just not plainly laid out for us, right? Like things are hidden and not in clear sight. And we have to be the light. Like we have to be the light in all areas, like in health and wellness, but in all areas, right? And I just look at it the same way, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. We have to. So.
Yes. Yeah. And even, something like Hashimoto's, right? Like I had dealt with it for a number of years too. And I saw a practitioner and she's like, what do you have to say that you're not saying? What part, and if you think about like where that energy is stored, it can be so powerful to just like, be like, yes, there's like a link to that stress of just holding things in. And so you've inspired me certainly and I'm sure lots of people who are listening to, show up even just slightly different, even if it's just to be a little brighter with your voice. It can be incredibly healing for you, your own self too.
Yeah. And, exactly. Look at that. Like I had really severe Hashimoto's too. When I went to my thyroid endocrinologist, she said that my TSH was like 107. My antibodies were sky high. 107, like TSH should be under like 2, like 0.5 to like 2 ideally. Right. And she's like, this is crazy. But yeah, I was suppressing a lot. And, even during the Hope for Cancer talk, Dr. Tony talked about, I actually had a loved one at the time that was potentially might have been diagnosed with lung cancer. And we were talking about lung cancer too during the talk. And he had said that grief and sorrow are associated with lung cancer. And I thought about this person in my life and the grief and sorrow that they were just holding on to and not letting go of. I was like, it's just crazy when we're suppressing these emotions and we're just not. And like, you can look at it just too, like not just trauma, but suppressing your voice. That's like suppressing your emotions. We have to be the light. And we have to let things go. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. And I think we live in a society now that because it's so hustle culture, because like the go, like do more, be more, accomplish more, right, is so glorified. That busyness distracts us so much from simply feeling our emotion, never mind processing it, that I think this is something that's just going to be so more important for people to understand and for practitioners like us to be able to bring to clients' attention, because I ask clients all the time, like, are you stressed? And they're like, yes, no, I'm definitely stressed. And like, they can answer that question. And I'm like, okay. And like, they have such a hard time, like actually feeling some of like the questions that I ask. And I feel like it's just because nobody is in touch with any of that anymore. We have so many ways to numb ourselves. We have so many ways to distract ourselves. And I think that's only going to get worse as we can. And so being able to bring this as part of your practice, I think is invaluable to client health outcomes.
Right. Like bringing awareness to it, because like I said, I suppressed the emotions from my first 2 traumas. And then when my sister passed and I realized I cannot suppress this, I actually had friends telling me, they told me, Nikki, we thought you were going to die. I was like 94 pounds. I couldn't even like eat anything. I was so sickly and I thought I was going to die too. But then when I realized that I was suppressing those emotions and I let myself grieve over my sister just wholeheartedly for as long as I needed to, my body naturally reminded me, you never grieved those other 2 processes. I never knew that until then. I thought that I had. I thought, well, I cried a few tears, but I was actually suppressing them. And so I think just bringing awareness to our clients and letting them mule it over, even if they're not like telling you, directly, yeah, I have this trauma or that. It can be big trauma or little trauma. It can be anything, any kind of stress on the body. Just bringing them awareness that emotions matter and stress matters, and the whole picture of it may just be what they need to just kind of start working through that. I have a client right now who, same thing. We just started, after talking a couple of months, she's like, I realize I need to start working through some emotional trauma. I didn't realize it before I started working with you. And now that we've been talking about this, I realize I have some that I think has been holding me back from healing. And that was so powerful. That was breakthrough for her.
Yeah. And we have to meet them where they're at, right? Sometimes it's not the initial month or 2 months, and you plant seeds and you just build that know, and trust, and people start to feel comfortable with, where you share your vulnerabilities. And it oftentimes leads to them being able to kind of get to that place on their own. Yeah. It's all part of the process. If people are listening and they wanted to find where you show up and share all of your big voice, your unapologetic voice, where are all the places that you show up? Website, social media?
Yeah, so I do have a website. It's naturalnikkywellness.com. But I primarily use my social media as my platform. Website's great to go get more information about me, but I'm on Instagram at Natural Nikki Wellness. And so that's where I like to just share everything that's near and dear to my heart, lots of health things, but also I'm just popping on whenever I feel like I need to share something that's been laid on my heart. And I don't hold it back, because who knows if it's something that could really help somebody or not, right? So if you want to come join me on Instagram, please follow me.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you did, for the beautiful story. I thank you so much for being on the Integrative Health Coach Success podcast. This was so enjoyable for me, and I imagine it was really inspiring for a lot of our listeners.
It was great, Julia. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Nikki.